Undercover heiress. A CEO's daughter cleans house. Jasmine Carter had never worked a day in her life, not in the way most people did. She was the only daughter of Malcolm Carter, the formidable CEO of Carter Enterprises, a multi-million-dollar corporation specializing in luxury real estate. Jasmine had grown up with privilege, attending the best schools, driving the most expensive cars, and never knowing what it meant to struggle. But Malcolm Carter had built his empire from nothing. He had once been a janitor cleaning floors, taking night classes, and working tirelessly to change his fate. He never wanted his daughter to take their fortune for granted. One evening, while having dinner in their grand estate, Malcolm set his wine glass down and looked Jasmine in the eye. "You're graduating next month, and I need you to understand something. Money doesn't make you powerful. Respect does. And respect is earned." Jasmine rolled her eyes. She had heard this speech 1,000 times. "Dad, I know how hard you worked. But I've studied business. I've interned in top firms." Malcolm cut her off with a knowing smirk. "You've interned in MY firm under MY protection. Have you ever been treated like just another employee? Have you ever seen how our workers really act when they think no one's watching?" Jasmine hesitated. That was when her father presented her with a challenge. "Go undercover. Work as a cleaner at one of my buildings for 2 weeks. See what the employees are really like. And if you find anything that needs fixing, fix it." Jasmine scoffed. "You expect me to mop floors?" Malcolm only smiled. "That's exactly what I expect." "The test begins reluctantly," Jasmine agreed. A week later, she was standing in a janitor's uniform, holding a mop inside the grand lobby of Carter Enterprises' flagship office building. Her identity was hidden. Only the top security staff knew who she really was. She was assigned to a team of cleaning staff, most of whom barely acknowledged her existence. There was Teresa, an older woman who had been with the company for over a decade, Rico, a cocky young man who took more smoke breaks than he actually worked, and Sandra, a manager who seemed more interested in scrolling on her phone than managing. The first few days were brutal. Jasmine struggled with tasks she had never done before, scrubbing bathrooms, mopping floors, and taking out heavy bags of trash. The other workers, especially Rico, mocked her clumsiness. "Damn, newbie. You clean like you've never done this before," he laughed one afternoon as she spilled a bucket of water. Sandra, their so-called supervisor, barely looked up. "Just hurry up. I don't want to be here all night." Jasmine was appalled, not just by their laziness, but by how they treated the job. Rico often slacked off, and Teresa, though kind, was overworked, doing more than her share to pick up the slack. One evening, Jasmine overheard something that made her blood boil. Rico and Sandra were laughing in the break room. "Honestly, as long as we keep sucking up to management, we'll never get fired. They don't care who cleans, as long as it looks clean. And that old lady Teresa? She does most of the work anyway. She's too scared to complain," Sandra added with a smirk. Jasmine clenched her fists. Not for long. The revealed 2 weeks passed, and it was time for Jasmine to act. She arrived at work in her usual cleaner's uniform, but was soon called into the conference room, along with Teresa, Rico, and Sandra. When they stepped inside, they were shocked to find Malcolm Carter himself waiting at the head of the table. He wasn't alone. Several senior executives sat beside him. Rico whispered, "What the hell is this about?" Malcolm stood, his gaze cold and commanding. "This is about an evaluation of employee performance. Jasmine, would you like to explain?" Jasmine stepped forward and removed her cleaning cap, letting her long, sleek hair fall over her shoulders. The recognition hit Rico and Sandra like a freight train. "Wait, you're..." Sandra stammered. Jasmine crossed her arms. "Yes, I'm Jasmine Carter, and for the last 2 weeks, I've been undercover as a janitor. Watching, listening. And let me tell you," she turned toward her father, "the results are disappointing." Sandra and Rico paled. Jasmine continued, listing their offenses one by one: Rico's laziness, Sandra's lack of leadership, and the way they took advantage of Teresa's hard work. Finally, Malcolm looked at Sandra and Rico. "You're both fired. Effective immediately." Rico shot up from his chair. "Wait, this isn't fair. You can't fire me for a few jokes." Malcolm's voice was like steel. "I can fire you for being a liability to this company. Your behavior has consequences." Sandra tried to plead her case, but it was useless. Security escorted them out. Then, Malcolm turned to Teresa. "Teresa, I heard you've been doing most of the work on your own." Teresa hesitated. "Sir, I just do my job." Malcolm smiled. "Well, we need more employees like you. How would you like to be promoted to a managerial role? Higher pay. Better hours. Teresa's eyes widened. Sir, I don't know what to say. Jasmine stepped forward, smiling. Say yes. You've earned it. A lesson learned that night, as Jasmine sat with her father, she sighed. I get it now. You wanted me to see the company from the bottom up. Malcolm nodded. A true leader knows the value of every employee. You'll never understand business if you don't understand the people who keep it running. Jasmine smiled. Lesson learned. And from that day on, she knew she would never take power or the people who worked under her for granted again. Rebuilding the team with Sandra and Rico gone, there was an immediate gap in the cleaning staff. Jasmine had made sure Teresa got the promotion, but that wasn't enough. She needed to ensure the entire system improved. Sitting in a meeting with her father in the HR department, Jasmine proposed an idea. Instead of hiring just anyone to replace them, let's revamp our hiring process. We need people who actually care about their work. And we need incentives to keep them motivated. Malcolm nodded. Go on. Jasmine laid out her plan. Higher wages for cleaning staff, ensuring they felt valued. Surprise quality checks to keep employees accountable. Performance bonuses for workers who exceeded expectations. A proper complaint system so employees like Teresa wouldn't suffer in silence. Her father listened, then smirked. You've been in the trenches for 2 weeks, and you're already implementing policy changes. I like it. By the next month, the changes were in place. Jasmine worked closely with Teresa to hire new employees, ones who took their jobs seriously. For the first time, workers felt heard and appreciated. But not everyone was happy about Jasmine's growing influence. Enemies in the shadows not long after Sandra and Rico were fired, whispers spread in the company. Some employees resented how quickly Jasmine had stepped into a leadership role. One of them was Damon Watts, a senior manager in the building maintenance division. Damon had been close with Sandra and Rico, and he didn't appreciate a young, inexperienced princess coming in and making changes. One day, Damon cornered Jasmine in the parking lot. You made a lot of enemies, kid. Maybe you should slow down before you step on the wrong toes. Jasmine didn't flinch. Are you threatening me? Damon smirked. Just giving advice. This isn't some business school project. You don't belong here. Jasmine clenched her fists. She refused to be intimidated. I belong wherever I choose to be, Mr. Watts. And if you have a problem with that, take it up with my father. Damon scoffed but walked away. Jasmine knew this wasn't the last she'd hear from him. A hidden scandal determined to keep pushing forward, Jasmine kept an eye on the business. But one evening, while reviewing payroll records, something caught her attention. Several large payments had been made under Damon's management, payments that didn't add up. She dug deeper. The records showed excessive spending on maintenance, work that was never actually done. It didn't take long for Jasmine to realize. Damon had been embezzling company money. She wasted no time. The next morning, she walked into her father's office and laid out the evidence. Malcolm's jaw tightened as he flipped through the documents. He's been stealing from us for years. That same afternoon, Damon was called into the executive boardroom. When he saw Jasmine and Malcolm waiting for him, his face darkened. You set me up, he snarled at Jasmine. Jasmine folded her arms. You did this to yourself. Security escorted Damon out, and just like that, another corrupt employee was gone. Jasmine's next chapter weeks passed, and Jasmine became more involved in the company. She wasn't just Malcolm Carter's daughter anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with. The employees respected her. They saw how she fought for them, how she held people accountable, and how she wasn't afraid to do the hard work herself. One day, Teresa knocked on her office door. I just wanted to say thank you, she said. Most people in your position wouldn't care about people like me. Jasmine smiled. That's where they're wrong. Every worker matters. And I'll make sure this company never forgets that. As she looked out over the city skyline, Jasmine knew this was just the beginning. She had started as a cleaner. Now, she was leading. And she wasn't stopping anytime soon. A new kind of leader months had passed since Jasmine Carter had first gone undercover as a janitor. What had started as a challenge from her father had turned into a transformation, not just for her, but for the entire company. The cleaning staff now had fair wages and better working conditions. Employees were held accountable, and corruption was no longer tolerated. But most importantly, Jasmine had earned the respect of the people who once doubted her. One evening, as she sat in her father's office, Malcolm Carter leaned back in his chair, studying her. You proved me wrong, Jasmine. She raised an eyebrow. You thought I'd fail? He chuckled. I thought you'd quit. I underestimated you. And I don't make that mistake often. Jasmine smirked. Then I guess I'll be making a lot more decisions around here. Malcolm nodded. You've earned that right. He slid a folder across the desk. It's time for your next step. She opened it, and her breath caught. Her name was on the cover. Vice President of Operations. Jasmine looked up at her father, stunned. Are you serious? You proved you understand the people who make this company work. Now, I want you to lead them. For the first time, it wasn't just about being Malcolm Carter's daughter. It wasn't about privilege. It was about legacy. And Jasmine was ready.